So, hello and welcome to this evening's webinar, focusing, I guess, on the question the title is your nutrition helping or hindering your running performance? For me, this is probably something that I find most runners, I guess, without realizing or without knowing it, is actually often their nutrition that actually is hindering their performance. So, over the years now, I've worked with hundreds of runners to help them, and quite often it's, I guess, what they often perceive as little things, little issues that they don't realize is actually having a really big impact on their running performance and their health. And I'll share some more around that in a moment. So I guess just to introduce myself. So my name's James. If you haven't met me before, so I'm a registered sport and exercise nutritionist. I'm on what's called the SENR practitioner registration list now. So basically, what this means is everything I talk about, deliver, it is at a very high standard in order to meet these requirements. I guess one thing I should say and I should mention, and that's part of the reason why I created Fuel the Runner, was the fact that there's so much, I guess, misinformation out there, and it's not just in running, but equally across sports, health, and well-being, and equally some of that information, or often that information, it's misleading, it's dangerous, and quite often actually it's not true. So. I've created Fuel the Runner with the purpose of providing runners of all levels and abilities with the tools, the knowledge, the confidence to enhance their running performance and achieve their health goals using the power of evidence-based nutrition. Again, just to sort of highlight, so in terms of me as well as my sort of, I guess, academic background, work as a sports nutritionist. Um, I work across a variety of different sports. I've worked with lots of runners, as I mentioned, but also I'm a keen runner myself. So, I've been really fortunate to be able to take part in the London Marathon three times. I've been fortunate to run a numerous sort of half marathons. As you can see, I've done quite a lot, for the RFU Injured Players Foundation. For me, it's it's something that I enjoy. It's something that I'm always looking to build, and I guess it's through my own sort of running experience that I started to identify, I guess, a need for having some nutrition support and information available. So, as I say, with sort of nutrition, when I first sort of started training for the London Marathon back in 2020, there was nothing out there at all. I joined some Facebook groups. I was sort of doing some research online, and all I found was just, I guess, misinformation, poor information, and equally the sad thing was a lot of runners were following this information as well. So I guess just to share a little bit more about this in a moment. Just to share a little bit more about this, I mean, I could probably spend the next, well, the whole, the next few hours talking about sort of common nutrition mistakes runners have mentioned to me. But I just wanted to sort of highlight two. The first image on the left-hand side, it's a little bit hard to see, but this is essentially a bowl of rice and soy sauce. And this is actually a meal that a runner had just before the Manchester Marathon earlier this year. She'd been training, she was targeting a 3 hour marathon finish time. She actually finished in just under 6 hours. She had this meal. She reached out to me after having done the marathon, and we were talking through her nutrition. At which point she said she'd had this meal, this rice and soy sauce, with no training, no practicing, and then had felt very, very sick. The first time she had it was on race day itself, and it's just things like this. Trying something new on race day, it's almost guaranteed to ruin your race. And it's not just the race itself, but you think about how many months you've trained for some of these events to basically undo all that good work through one decision. And it's not her fault by any means at all. This was something that was recommended to her by another runner. And as I say, there's a lot of support out there, don't get me wrong, but the trouble is a lot of the time the support, it is very misleading, and as I say, sort of quite, well, can do some real damage, like I say. The second image on the right hand side, so the pizza. So this is something I actually saw firsthand myself. So a few years ago, running the London Marathon, the crowds, the supporters, they can be a great source of support, but they can be a huge hindrance. And what I basically saw, what I found, was these supporters were offering slices of pizza to runners as they went past. So I was running with three other random guys at the time, all of which took a slice of pizza. And the trouble with this is half a mile further down the course. Two of them are then being sick at the side of the course, and the third one's then trying to find sort of a private area to, well, relieve himself. So I guess you know where I'm sort of going with that. And again, same thing here. It's just that sort of, Again, you could argue it's a silly choice, but it's just the things that people don't realize, the nutrition choices that people make on race day in the build up to races. As I say, it's just going to ruin your chance of a PB. Again, I guess the food, the fuel you put into your body, it can be that literally can be the difference between between you hitting a PB and you having to stop to have a pee or maybe something else. This third example I just wanted to share. This was a genuine post that I got tagged in multiple times on a Facebook group about 2 years ago now, and this was a genuine post. This was not an April Fool's joke or anything like that. But the comment here: anyone else on a January diet and having trouble getting enough calories in guilt-free for long runs? If so, give this a go. 6 slices of cucumber and one spoonful of butter is all you need. Take one slice per 2 kilometers and a lick of the butter every 1 kilometer, and you'll be surprised at the difference a healthy and natural fueling option can give you. 100 calories and 2 grams of carbs in free, plus the cucumber provides added hydration, so no need for any nasty chemical filled hydration drinks. So already you can see there. I mean, you've probably got a million questions. I certainly do. How do you keep the butter cold? Was probably the first question that came to my mind. But equally, as you start looking through this, I get the point of trying to sort of be better in terms of food choices, but things like this: one, it's very dangerous information; two, it's very misleading; and three, information like this is just going to massively hinder your running performance. And I guess four, to add to this, there are people who were then commenting and they were going to use or this advice. Did use this advice. So it's just things like this that, as I say, nutrition can make a huge difference. It's understanding the role and importance that it has. So, in terms of this webinar, there's sort of three things or three areas I'm going to focus on. So, I'm going to talk a little bit about why your nutrition is often holding back your runs. I'm going to talk about why your recovery after a run is taking so long. And I'm going to talk a little bit about why your diet could be causing you to become unwell and injured. And then we'll finish with any questions, should anyone have any. So from this then, I guess the a good sort of starting point here is thinking or becoming a bit more aware of why nutrition is so important for running performance. Quite often when I talk about nutrition or when I ask runners about this, probably the most common area in which people focus on is sort of the fueling and sort of race day performance. But even then, they're just thinking about what they eat before the run. However, as you can see, what you eat and drink makes a huge difference across a variety of different situations and scenarios. So I won't talk about these in loads of depth and detail. Some of them I will talk a bit more about as part of this presentation. But essentially, if we start at the top in the sort of 1 o'clock position, so what you eat and drink, it's going to have a massive impact on your fueling and energy levels. It's going to impact your race day performance. So again, your chances of hitting that PB, your chances of being able to hit that sort of target time, that target race pace. It's what you eat and drink that can also impact your recovery. So I'll talk more about this one in a moment. And as part of that, things like training adaptation. So a really common issue, I guess, I find with a lot of runners is the fact that they're training regularly, they're getting out doing their runs each week, but they're not seeing any further improvement or any development. Quite often, actually, they're almost, I guess, doing themselves more harm than good in a way because their energy levels have just dropped completely. They're not seeing any improvement or development from their training, and it's often this lack of nutrition or lack of effective nutrition strategy that's stopping this from happening. Some additional roles that nutrition plays is also the role and importance in terms of injury prevention, in terms of maintaining sort of performance and maintaining sort of strength and stability. On top of that, what we eat and drink can make a huge difference in terms of our body composition. So as runners, we're trying to maintain that sort of lean muscle, that lean mass, but minimize maybe that sort of build up of fat mass. Outside of running, it's then the role that nutrition plays in terms of supporting your overall health and well-being. So what you eat and drink can help maintain a strong immune system, so minimize the days lost due to illness where you're stuck in bed because you're really unwell, you're full of a cough, cold, you've got no energy, and maybe as part of that, I guess worse, maybe you've picked up some additional injuries, maybe you've got some other sort of health complications going on through maybe that lack of nutrition strategy. Again, three areas that I'm going to focus on in sort of more detail. I mean, again, I could talk for hours and hours about all of these segments in more detail, but I just wouldn't have the time, and equally, it's a lot to take in. So, three areas that I'm going to focus on in this webinar, starting with fueling, a little bit around sort of training, adaptation, and recovery, and then to finish off a little bit about sort of the health and well-being. So starting off then in terms of the fueling side of things. So as I said before, what we eat and drink is going to have a huge impact on sort of how well we're able to train, the target pace, and equally how well we do in our competitions. In terms of how we fuel, so fueling really starts around 2 to 3 hours before the run itself. So if you're running at sort of 10 o'clock in the morning, I'd start fueling around 7 o'clock. If you're running at 6 p.m. in the evening, again, same thing. I'd be looking to fuel around 3 o'clock. So maybe having a late lunch, for example, or having a lunch and then a sort of afternoon snack, sort of an hour or two before. What we're trying to do here is choose meals and snacks that are sort of high in carbohydrate but low in fat and fiber. And I'll show you some examples of what this looks like. If you're watching this and you're trying to sort of hit the targets, hit the guidelines, one thing that I guess a lot of runners don't necessarily think of or focus on it is actually the quantities required in some of these situations. So when we talk about sort of nutrition, we often talk about the three T's of nutrition. I mean, for myself, I actually call it the four T's. So the first T is all to do with the type, so what you eat and drink. So are you having a portion of carbohydrate? Are you having a portion of protein? Are you having a portion of um, fruit and vegetables, for example? Which is obviously really important, and that's where most runners tend to focus on. The second T then is the total, so the quantities, the amounts, so how much are we having? Are we actually consuming enough to hit these targets? Or in some cases, are we having maybe more than we need? So what we actually find is having too much is then going to negatively impact us because it might be the excess, what we're not using during or after exercise, that could end up impacting our body composition there as well. The third T is then the timing. So you can see there that sort of 2 to 3 hour window. The timing here is then really important. So this basically allows the time for this is sorry, in terms of timing, it's all to do with when we eat and drink throughout the day in relation to exercise. So again, a really common mistake I see runners make is where essentially they try and consume sort of way too much too close to the start of exercise. So I had someone quite recently who was basically eating a huge bowl of pasta. Once they'd sort of had that pasta, within 20 minutes, half an hour, they were trying to go out for a run and they were doing sort of 10, 15K. But after about 6K, 7K, they were suffering, struggling with runner's gut. And it's the time, it's the issue there is you haven't given your stomach, your body enough energy, or sorry, enough time to digest that meal. So really important to think about those three T's. And that really ties me into what I call the fourth T. So the fourth T is what I call trial. And so trial is basically about the importance of using your training sessions to practice, trial with different foods and drinks to see what works best for you. My job, my role as a sports nutritionist is very much to translate the science, the theory into application. So if I was to sit down with 10 runners, for example, all doing the same race, there's a good chance I'm going to end up with 10 completely different nutrition strategies in terms of foods and drinks, but they're still hitting those recommended guidelines. So, I guess going back to what's on the screen, targets here, essentially, the more time we've got available, the bigger the meal we can have. So, we're aiming for around 4 grams of carbohydrate per kilogram body mass. As that time to the start of exercise gets sort of less, aiming for smaller amounts. So aiming for about a gram of carbohydrate per kilogram body mass around 60 minutes before exercise. And I'll show you what this looks like in a moment. Before I come on to some examples, I just wanted to touch on fasted training. So fasted training is something that does come up quite often, and it's something I see a lot of runners say, "Oh yeah, I train fasted," due to I guess the perceived benefits of the fact that training fasted, it's going to burn more fat, it's going to I guess mainly help with weight loss, and but equally there is a little bit of research showing some benefits in terms of physiological changes that occur within the muscle. I guess just to highlight on this, yes, absolutely. There is research showing some benefits, but when we look at the research overall, And when we look at the impact of fueled versus fasted training, or equally same thing with performance, carbohydrate is always king. Carbohydrate is not your enemy; it's your energy. What you eat and drink, get enough carbohydrate into the body, is going to give you the fuel to help optimize that performance. And so, if you're constantly under fueling your training, your runs, one, it's going to impact the sort of quality and quantity of how much you're able to do, and two, it's going to increase your risk of injury and equally illness as well. And just to back this up, this was a fairly recent study that was conducted end of last year, and what they basically found was those that were training fasting on a regular basis, the I guess incidence of bone injury was about 1.6 times higher compared to those who were actually fueling themselves. So, like I say, if you are going to do fasted training, I'd maybe be doing it once a week at max, and for your sort of shorter, lighter sessions, anything under an hour. If you're going out for a 2 hour sort of race pace run, I'd be fueling it effectively and using that as a run to practice your race day nutrition there. So just to show you then what this looks like in terms of some potential sort of food and sort of pre-run meals. Again, by no means a definitive list, but just a few examples to get you started. This could be something like a bowl of porridge with a handful of fruit. It could be things like bowl of Weetabix if you don't like porridge, or equally you could use a bowl of cereal. So if you prefer sort of bowl of cornflakes, Rice Krispies, things like that. You'll notice in those I've also got some additional carbohydrate that comes from the fruit. It's a little bit hard to see in the image, but there is some honey on there as well. Other options, maybe if you are training later on in the day into the afternoon, things like pasta dishes. So those in a sort of tomato or vegetable sauce compared to the cheesy and creamy sauces would be recommended here. So something like an arrabbiata compared to a carbonara, just because the cheese, the cream, it's going to take longer to digest. And as I said before, massively increase that risk of runner's gut. Some runners prefer to stick to, I guess, the sort of lower volume but sort of high carbohydrate options. So things like a slice of toast or a couple of slices of toast with some peanut butter and a banana is a fairly common one. Or just to add a slightly different alternative, things like jacket potatoes. Again, very simple, very effective. So you've got a really good source of carbohydrate from the jacket potato itself. And then you can alter the toppings to support either pre-run fueling or post-exercise recovery as well. As I said, as that time before the start of exercise reduces, we need to think about sort of how much we're going to have here, and we want to sort of optimize fueling but minimize that risk of runner's gut. So having a sort of pre-run snack can be a really good option here. So I guess there's a couple of ways in which the snacks can be beneficial. One, this could be for your long run. So we fueled ourselves the 3 hours before with the bowl of porridge, for example, and then having an additional snack in the sort of hour or so before just keeps those energy levels topped right up. Equally, if you're someone that's training with a short period of time, maybe you're training first thing in the morning, um, maybe training sort of at lunchtime. Having some easy snacks is going to be a great way to just get some fuel into the body. So you've just got a bit more energy that's going to help you sort of push a little bit further or a little bit harder in that session itself. So again, this is by no means a definitive list, but a few examples, things like a bowl of yogurt and some berries. Again, you could use a variety, use whichever ones you prefer. As part of that, using things like fruit, so bananas, dried apricots, raisins, sultanas, a sort of handful of those would be a really good sort of high carb snack. Things like cereal bars, Rice Krispie squares, they are very popular, but equally you don't have to use them. Other brands are available. Things like sports drinks. So again, you don't have to use Lucozade Sport, Gatorade, or anything sort of really expensive. You could make your own sports drink using sort of juices, cordials, with maybe like a little pinch of salt just to provide some electrolytes. Smoothies are probably one of my favorite nutrition options just because they are so easy to make. You can blend up whatever ingredients you have, and again, you can tailor the options or tailor the ingredients you use to either support pre-run fueling or equally post-run recovery as well. Just to add something in a little bit different there, things like serene or sort of malt loaf, it is often a very popular option as well for runners to use too. So yeah, that's the first way in which I think nutrition is often hindering runners' performance is the fact that they're just not eating enough, or maybe they're eating maybe I guess the wrong foods at the sort of wrong time, shall we say. The second area where I often find nutrition is hindering runners' performance is actually through, I guess, the recovery side of things. So if runners focus on their nutrition, they tend to focus on the fueling, as I mentioned, but quite often you come back in, you've run however many miles, you jump in the shower, and you might be straight on to work, family, other commitments. And quite often the nutrition side of things is the thing that goes out the window, or if people will eat, they tend to eat what's quick, what's easy, what sort of doesn't take a lot of time to process. The trouble with this, though, is essentially it often means that they're lacking a number of sort of key nutrients and missing out on this golden opportunity. And so, what we find here is if you imagine you're, I guess, overlooking your recovery nutrition strategy, it's a bit like using your phone continuously but not charging it. So, if you imagine in the morning you wake up, maybe your phone's been on charge all night, the as you use it throughout the day, the battery level just starts to drop, and eventually it's gonna run out. And this is really what's happening in the body. So if you're constantly training over a period of weeks, period of months in the build up to an event, if you're not prioritizing your recovery, if you're not recharging the batteries, all we see here is, so maybe at the start of training your battery levels up here somewhere around maybe 90, 95%, but quite quickly after, well, it could be a few weeks. I've spoken, and I've worked with runners where I'd probably say their battery level is maybe down in the 10, 20% at max because they're just not getting enough fuel back into the body. They're overlooking this. And like I say, it does make a big difference. So when it comes to enhancing your training adaptation, improving that recovery, if you've done a little bit of reading before, you may have come across the 3 R's of recovery. Some call it the 4 R's. I actually call it the 5 R's. So the first 3 R's are more nutrition focused. We've got our rehydrate, refuel, and the rebuild. The rehydration is about replacing the fluid that's been lost during exercise. The refuel is about replacing the carbohydrate. So if you imagine carbohydrate it is like the sort of energy level on your phone battery. We've now used up those stores, and we need to make sure we replace them with some additional carbohydrate. And of course, the rebuild is in the importance of protein to support that muscle growth and repair. I will talk more about these recommendations in a moment, but just to highlight the other two. The fourth R is around rest. So, rest is about the importance of good quality sleep as often as possible, so aiming for around 7 to 9 hours each night. The fifth R, I actually add myself, and this is just about the importance of repeating, following this process after every training session, after every match, after every race. Following these sort of four principles continuously over the coming weeks and months, I guarantee you, your running performance is just going to get so much better because you're now supporting, you're giving the body the energy it needs to recover, but equally to grow and adapt as well. So just to highlight then a little bit more about these key areas. So like I say with the refuel, we really want to start this recovery process as soon as we can. A few years ago, there was this notion of this anabolic window, which was basically saying that we had to eat within the first 30 minutes of exercise, otherwise we'd miss the gains. Since then, this has been sort of disproven, but having said that, the sooner we start that recovery process, i.e., the sooner we get some food, some fluid back into the body, the quicker that's going to help the body to recover, and equally, as I say, enhance that training adaptation as well. So. Again, what we're trying to do with the refuel, simple carbohydrate sort of snacks and drinks until we then maybe get home or get to a restaurant, we've got access to more suitable meals. The second R is the rebuild. So this is about the importance of the protein, as I mentioned. So same thing here, adding a source of protein through different snacks and drinks, just going to support that recovery. In terms of the rehydration, you'd be amazed how much fluid you do lose during a run or during exercise, particularly at the moment at time of recording where it is so hot outside. And it's currently recommended for every kilogram lost through sweat. So if you were to weigh yourself before and after a run, and let's say you ran, just for easy maths, you ran for 60 minutes and you come back and you're a kilo lighter, that means your sweat rate is around a litre. So a kilo weighs roughly the equivalent to a litre. So from this, it's recommended to consume about 1.5 litres just to help replenish or help us rehydrate there. In terms of In terms of the rest, as I said, aiming for around 7 to 9 hours of sleep. Equally, having a sort of post-run nap, maybe if you've had a big training week, gone for a long run, having a sort of 20 minute, half an hour sort of power nap, somewhere between sort of 12 and 4 o'clock in the afternoon has been shown to be a very effective way to support that post-run or post-exercise recovery without compromising your sleep that evening. Again, like I say, the sooner you start this process, the more effective you'll recover, and equally the greater the training adaptations to come as well. So we can further break this recovery down into sort of three phases. Phase one is basically what you do as soon as training's finished or as soon as the race is finished. And so trying to get some form of food, some form of fluid, drinks back into your body is going to make a huge difference here. Phase two is then what you do 2 to 3 hours, 2 to 3 hours after the exercise itself. So having a sort of more substantial meal, equally still trying to hit those 3 hours that I mentioned, but now adding things like fruits and vegetables, trying to add as much variety, as many different types, colours as possible, and can also provide things like antioxidants to support that muscle growth and repair there too. Phase three is then on your sort of recovery day. So the day or even days after a big race or run or long run, your body's still in this recovery mode. So it's still really important to think about your food choices here to help the body recover. So just to show you then what this looks like. If we start with sort of simple snacks that you can keep in the car, kit bag, run bag, or if you've got sort of access to, things like fruit and cereal bars are probably my sort of favourite go-to ones. Depending on where you are, things like smoothies, things like yogurts, if you've got the ability to store them at a suitable temperature. Things like wraps, bagels, sandwiches, if that's what you prefer, with maybe a source of protein, and some salads, something like a chicken salad wrap. Again, very quick, very easy to make, and again, it's something you can just sort of snack on once you finish there. Once you're then home, or once you've then got access to more suitable meals and cooking facilities, things like pasta dishes, rice dishes, things like stir fries. Stir fries here is sort of my sort of go-to option. So choice of protein, choice of carbohydrate, and then sort of plenty of other ingredients. So you might do like a sort of chicken tomato pasta dish. You might do something like a bolognese. Things like stir fries. Again, I always like it because you can just get your source of protein. You can then add in whatever vegetables you might have sort of sitting in the cupboard. Add a source of carbohydrate, maybe some rice and pasta there, and you can cook it pretty much in sort of one dish. The one just to sort of talk a little bit more about is actually the benefits of milk. You may have seen over the past sort of few months or so, all of a sudden there's been this, I guess, rehype around the benefits of milk. So when I say milk, this could be semi-skim milk, the flavoured milk. So you can see I've got some Yazoo on the screen. And the reason for this, or the reason why it is so beneficial, is the fact it really covers the 3 hours of the recovery that I just mentioned. So a pint of, or a large glass of milk, for example, we've got a really good source of carbohydrate. We've got a really good source of protein. We've got a really good source of fluid in itself, and then actually, as an additional benefit, we've actually got a really good source of calcium to support that sort of bone health. Bone health, maintain strong bones, strong teeth there as well. And just to show you, this is something that I do myself. I am a man of my word. So this is me a few years ago doing the London landmarks. Finished the half marathon as we're walking back to the station. You can see just about behind me in the image. There was a Tesco, and as we walked past, my family said to me, "Do you want anything? Can we get you some whatever?" And I said, "Yeah, can I have some milk?" I wasn't able to find it, but I have got somewhere an image of me drinking some milk on the train on the way home, and the person next to me giving me some very funny looks there. The third area in which I often find nutrition is sort of hindering runners' performance is actually more related to sort of health and well-being. And I'd probably say 95% of the time, this is unintentional. And it just comes back to what I said at the start, the fact they don't realise just how much fuel it is actually required to support performance. And so what I often find with a lot of runners is when you look at the demands of training, demands of work, family, other commitments, other sports they may play, their energy expenditure is way up here. But quite often the trouble is their energy intake is way down here, and so they're continuously underfueled. And the trouble with this is where if we haven't got enough energy in the body, again, if I go back to my sort of phone battery analogy, if we haven't got enough energy in the body, this is where we're more. It's a bit like when our phone goes into low battery mode. Yes, the main functions work, but a lot of the background functions have actually been switched off. And this is really what's happening in the body. So, what we find now is because we're not eating enough in regards to our training and energy expenditure, we're now susceptible to coughs and colds. As I say, we're becoming ill. We're now picking up injuries. Stress fractures is very common in sort of endurance sport, and again, a lot of the time is often linked back to sort of nutrition or lack of an effective nutrition strategy in place. So, a few tips just to help with this. So, to help reduce your risk of becoming unwell, one is to make sure you are fueling the demands of your training, your day, and I'll talk more about this in a moment. I know not always the easiest thing to do, but trying to avoid large crowds where possible, and equally trying to avoid people who are ill, who are unwell, just to minimise that risk of you picking up anything. As I just mentioned, one of the most important aspects of recovery that a lot of runners tend to overlook, in my opinion, is sleep. Loads of them will go and buy the latest massage gun. They'll go for a lot of sort of muscle work. They'll go for all these tools with sort of very. I'm not against any of these things by any means at all. But again, when you then say to them, "What's your sleep like?" Oh, it's awful. It's terrible. They spend hours and hours on their phone. They doom scroll. They sort of spend a lot of time looking at electronic light, things like that. Like I say, focusing on your sleep is not just going to improve your recovery physically, but it's going to help recover you or help you recover psychologically, mentally. It's going to help maintain that strong immune system, like I say. Again, at time of recording, maybe not required, but once we come into the winter training, so if you're training for any sort of I guess February, March, April half marathons, running events, there's a good chance you're training in the dark. And equally, we just don't get enough exposure to sunlight, to vitamin D. So vitamin D supplementation is certainly something I would recommend. The other one I'd add to this is essentially following good food hygiene practices as well. So, again, I often speak to a lot of runners or a lot of athletes who just don't have that standard in place. So, what I mean here is making sure you're sort of preparing foods correctly, but equally wiping down surfaces, making sure everything is being cleaned properly. As I say, I've had quite a few incidents over the years where I'd probably say that athletes have become unwell because they've not followed sort of good hygiene practices along the way there. The second thing that we can start to do is manage some of those symptoms. So if you do start to notice you're starting to cough a little bit more, you've got maybe a little bit of a cold, if you start to notice that your energy levels have started to really drop, a couple of things that can sort of further help. So as I say, focusing on the rest, the sleep is really key. But some additional treatments that can help, things like nasal sprays to reduce congestion, consuming sort of hot drinks, hot cordials, honey and lemon, for example. Hot Ribena is often a popular one to try and alleviate that sort of soreness in your throat. And as part of that, making sure you're sort of staying hydrated effectively as well. So again, I often speak to a lot of runners who I often call water the forgotten nutrient, just because I speak to so many athletes who just don't consume anywhere near enough. The third thing that we can do to help us recover a little bit quicker, there is some research showing about the benefits of around vitamin C and zinc supplementation. So when those symptoms do starting to consume these can certainly help. Again, things like the sort of nasal sprays, things like Vicks First Line Defense can also help when those symptoms start too. So I guess just to wrap up to wrap up this webinar with just some few tips. As you've seen, fueling is so important. It's something that most runners they've overlooked or they don't know how to do effectively, and that's why I created Fuel the Runner to help with this. In terms of recovery, same thing here. Nutrition is an area that I just find is often overlooked by a majority of not just runners, but athletes across all competitive levels, age ranges, things like that. So, again, prioritizing your recovery is really key. Again, I'm fully aware that I haven't talked about this in this presentation, but supplements. When it comes to supplements, the supplements market is well into the billions in terms of value. There's hundreds of new products going out on the market every single day. Yet less than 10 actually have good, strong scientific evidence to back up their use. So if you are thinking about using a supplement, please do reach out. I'm always happy to answer questions around sort of supplements, or please do reach out to a qualified sports nutritionist, just because, like I say, most supplements that I often see people are promoting, there's no actual science or no actual research to back up their use. And that leads me on to sort of my final point. If you have found this webinar useful, if you are looking to get help and support when it comes to your nutrition, please do reach out to someone who is qualified. So there's people like myself, we've gone off, or I've gone off, studied it for 4 years at university. I've got my SCNR accreditation, whereas again at the moment there's a lot of people promoting some really dangerous, misleading nutrition information and advice, and I have seen firsthand the damage that it's done to the runner, to the athlete, not just physically, physiologically, but equally psychologically too. So please do reach out. And that leads me quite nicely on to something just to sort of help you. So I hope you have found this presentation helpful. And if you are looking to get started with nutrition, you just want a little bit more sort of guidance and a little bit more sort of structure, I've put together what I call the Fueled Foundations program. So it's basically a self-guided course, and it's basically for runners who want to feel stronger. So they want to learn how to fuel themselves effectively to get more out of their training. They don't want to be sort of crashing and hitting the wall after sort of half an hour, 45 minutes or so. They want help to improve their recovery, so you've seen how important it is. And they just want to build sort of better nutrition habits. So within this course I've created, it's essentially 30 nutrition modules that cover not just running performance, but it covers everything from including life outside of running. So the impact of sort of nutrition when you go food shopping, for example, navigating the supermarket, food packaging, food labels. There's so much more to it. You also get access to a community of committed runners who are also taking part too. Each module comes with a guide and a resource or some recipes to download to then support your training as well. So this is something that is I have designed with very much with runners in mind. So you can scan this QR code, and this will take you to the link to sign up and complete the course. And if you use the code you can see on screen, Fuel10, this will give you a 10% discount on the cost of the course as well. Just to let you know, I guess at time of recording, I'm about to relaunch my Fuel to the Finish group support program as well. So basically, this will start on Monday, the 7th of September, 2026. If you're watching this, I guess as a replay after this date, I will be running them at regular intervals over the coming year. But basically, this is an 8-week group support program for runners of all levels and abilities. In terms of that group support, you'll have access to a private community of runners. You'll have nutrition support from me. You'll get access to nutrition tools, resources that you can apply for your upcoming races or if you're working towards a training goal. Each week, as well as having sort of 8 weekly webinars, we'll also have sort of live Q&A sessions that will be just for people on the group itself. So again, if this is something that you're interested in, scan this QR code and it will take you to the landing page, register your interest. Basically, to get on the course, you register your interest, complete I guess induction form, book in a sort of completely free consultation call with me, just so I can understand a little bit more about where you're at, and then we'll get started on the 7th of September. So I hope you have found this helpful, beneficial. If you do have any questions as you've gone through the content, please do feel free to reach out. So drop me a message on sort of socials. So there's the Fuel the Runner Instagram page, but equally Facebook group. Have a look at the website, or equally drop me an email. So fueltherunner@gmail.com. In the meantime, what I'll do below this video, I'll put a load of links and additional resources to further help you, and I hope to be working with you and supporting your running goals soon.